Welcome to On the Bobble Podcast, episode 136. I'm your host, Boss J. What on with me is my co-host, Yuki Lee Bender. Today we're going to be talking about calling London, calling San Diego, and we're also going to be talking about the Sage format as a whole as well. I guess before we do that, have you played the Compendium of Ray Sage yet?
I have played a little bit. I have been busier than I would have liked, so I feel a little bit under-tested on Sage and have largely been electing to test CC. I wasn't able to go to either of the Sage callings because it was expensive and because of life being busy. But I will be going to calling Montreal in a few weeks. So I've been mostly focused on that. And for Pro Tour, there will be some bannings potentially. There's a BNR. So I kind of figure that focusing on CC for now and revisiting Sage after we have PQ data and all of that is probably the way I'm going to end up approaching this season, which wasn't my plan originally. I wanted to be a little more in the weeds, but it's kind of how it's been playing out. Because I'm going to Montreal in one of the weeks. I'm only playing one Sage PQ, so we'll talk about what I'm playing later. But yeah, I'm probably just going to play something without the most number of reps and then revisit the format a little bit later. Is kind of where I'm at.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense, yeah. You have the bannings, and I feel like the format is going to be changed. Do you know if for the Pro Tour Yokohama, if there's going to be the community bans in effect already?
My understanding is no. So I think the community bans will happen after this season. So it'll be like after Yokohama, after Compendium is done, and I guess like probably roughly when the new set is coming out is my understanding. I think they're kind of really going for these seasons, like the World Tour points are on these seasons around the set releases, and I think they're going to do the hero bannings around these seasons as well. Originally I thought there was going to be the community bans, and then I heard that there wasn't. So I believe my current understanding is no.
Okay, that makes sense. Yeah, I've been playing quite a bit of Sage on, at least just on like Teleshar with like a couple of my friends, pretty casually, but a lot of the decks are pretty sweet. Yeah, it's been pretty fun. I think this is like a good introduction format for a lot of people. It's like really cheap to build decks. I've had a bunch of people who typically don't play Fab message me and be like, "Do you have these commons?" And be like, "Yeah, I do." And I'd be like, I charge them maybe like $5, $10, something like that, and they have like a complete deck. Funnily enough, like the exclusion of cards like Sink Below and Fate Foreseen is like actually keeping the cost of this format way lower than if those cards were in the format. So like, funnily enough, this format feels even cheaper than what Commoner felt.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I think there's like maybe the odd pain point, like Briar plays Skizik, which I think is only in the Aurora Armory deck. But I think other than that, it's mostly pretty approachable, especially with the Armory, not the Armory decks, the Precon decks. There's some like nice reprints in there. For example, like Run Roughshod is in KO, and that was a card that was previously like a little bit hard to get. And so yeah, I think between what you're talking about and then also the precons, it's pretty easy to get the cards you want for just about every deck.
Yeah, and the Phi deck having Blood Scent, oh, goodbye, $8 piece of chest equipment.
Yeah. I think by and large, a lot of the cards that were like maybe annoying to get are easier to get because of the precons. I'm sure that there's other exceptions, just like Skizik, but I really do think they are the exceptions. The majority of the cards are pretty inexpensive, which is great, honestly. And we had the precon event at our locals on this weekend, like for release weekend. I think this was kind of like a global thing, and it was awesome. It was a lot of fun, and like a lot of people brought out their partners who I say they don't play Flesh and Blood. I think they play like a little bit at home, but I've never seen them like come out to an event before. And a bunch of them came out and got to meet people's partners, and we had some new players, and yeah, it was just it was really good. I think that this is I think Silver Age is great for the game and great for getting new people interested, which is huge. I think I'm sure we've talked about it before, but Flesh and Blood has this big problem of like decks are expensive. There's a really steep learning curve. And I think that some people will tough it out and get there and really love the game. But a lot of people kind of bounce off of it. And I think Silver Age gives a lot of people like a much more approachable way to engage with the format at first.
I agree with you. I guess before we continue, do you want to do a Patreon shout out?
Yeah, so thank you to all of our patrons who get back to the show. We really appreciate you. There's been a lot of support lately. I released my first take on Phi for Classic Constructed on there, and that has been doing quite well. There's been a lot of enthusiasm about that. I may or may not post a Sage deck. I'll probably do like a small update on what I played this weekend and maybe like how I would sideboard it, but Sage has not been so much my focus, and instead I'll probably be focusing more on CC as we go into that, and I'm sure I'll be sharing whatever I end up playing in Montreal, which naturally I haven't decided yet.
That's fair. That's fair.
But yeah, all that is to say, thank you to all of our patrons. We really, really appreciate you. And thank you to all of our listeners in general. Even if you're not able to give back, we appreciate you tuning in each week. If you want to support the show, you can find us on patreon.com/onthebobble. Or if you are looking to buy singles from Invasion, probably one of the largest Canadian retailers and where I buy all my Flesh and Blood singles, you can check them out at invasioncnc.ca and use the code YLB5 to let them know that we sent you there. And that also that helps us, and that helps you save 5% on your singles at checkout.
Do you want to move right in and talk about Calling London? So this was the world premiere calling for Sage. All the pen cards were legal, but I guess like the set wasn't actually out yet, so they had to get the cards basically by opening boxes. I feel like I heard some of the vendors also had the cards too. But yeah, for a rare and common format, it shouldn't have been that big of an issue for people to find all the cards for their deck.
Yeah, it seemed like, from what I heard, people didn't have too many problems. I think there was enough people that you could buy 2 boxes as like part of there was like an option when you were signing up for the calling, or when you were signing up online to do it, you could buy 2 boxes. And I think enough people did that you could probably get the cards that you needed, because yeah, like people are just playing the cards for their deck, right? So.
And this calling had 755 players registered for the calling. That's a huge calling. Do you want to just move right in and talk about the metagame, at least what people brought to this event?
Yeah, so Silver Age in general is just like a huge format, and we saw a ton of different heroes on display. I think there's something like 30 different heroes that we see on the metagame breakdown, which is crazy. But the most represented, probably not too big of a surprise, Briar with 142 players at almost 20% of the metagame. Then a pretty big drop off, Bravo Flattering Showman at 68, Phi at 63, then another drop, and then we have like Ira 46, Oldhim 46, Enigma 35, KO 30, Reinar 28, Kano 23, Dory 23, Icelander 22, and then down to like the teens from there. So yeah, definitely seems like Briar, Bravo, Phi were kind of the big decks that people were interested in this like initial calling that we have, but very diverse field, a lot of heroes showing up, and maybe not a surprise now, but I think at the time there were like definitely a few breakout decks at this event.
Oh yeah, definitely a bunch of decks, or at least a bunch of like ideas that were being played here that's going to kind of solidify in the calling afterwards, which was San Diego, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I guess with that day 1 in mind, we can look at day 2, the conversion rates, what did well, and we see like some decks really performing. So I think like Briar, 17% conversion rate, which is very solid for most represented deck. There was 24 Briars in day 2. It was 96 players total in day 2, so almost a quarter of day 2, which is 17% might not sound that high, but because of how big this calling is, you consider like 96 of 755 players. That's like around maybe like 13% of total decks made day 2. So if you're around 13%, you're about average. If you're above that, you're a little bit above average. So Briar at 17%, while also being the most represented, is quite a solid performance.
Oh yeah, it's definitely a good performance. Just because like if there was like very little copies of your deck that even participated, and if one of them day 2s, then you'll see these like really high numbers, like 30%, 33%, or like 25%. But this is actually just like more of an outlier on the data, and there just like wasn't enough data points. But Briar definitely had enough data points, and it still shows the higher than average conversion rate, which is a very impressive start for this hero. I think Briar is gonna be like a mainstay in this format, and I have a feeling this hero might be the first one to get voted out. Is my guess at least.
Yeah, I agree. She doesn't feel like so incredibly broken or like you absolutely have to be playing Briar, but man, is she good, is kind of how I feel. Like she's super consistent. All her hands are good. She has good equipment. She's probably one of the aggro decks that feels like it can block the most. Like she's just super, super solid. She's extremely good. And I think you like kind of can't go wrong playing Briar right now is what it feels like. It's not to say you don't have your tough matchups. I think some of the fatiguey guardians can be a little bit tricky, but you have game into everything. Your deck is super super powerful, and she's shown very consistent results.
Right underneath that is Bravo. This is a new Bravo. There was 9 copies for 13%, just right about average. And then 7 Ira, 7 Oldhim, 6 KO, and 5 Dory, 5 Fi. Their conversion rates vary quite a bit depending on how many actually showed up in day 1. But all of these hero is above 13%. Dory being the quite a big outlier with 23% converting to day 2. And I have a feeling that not all the Dories who brought this deck for Calling London was all on the same list. But I feel like the ones that did make day 2, I would assume will be all on Decimator Axe.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So yeah, Dory probably like the biggest breakout deck on the weekend. Really good performance. And I also want to shout out KO. 20% conversion rate for KO. I think a lot of people identified KO as a solid aggro deck, but actually performed quite well as well. And then Fi, slight underperform at 8%, but hard to say for sure. There's only so many people playing the event. On the note of Fi, Florin Christian Logan being kind of the people's hero, taking the Fi precon, making it into day 2, and making a pretty deep run in the event. Ultimately didn't make top 8, which is sad. I was rooting for him on the precon, but yeah, it just goes to show that some of these precons are pretty strong, and I think that also speaks highly of Fi.
Yeah, I think he made top 32 though, right?
Yeah, I believe he cashed. He was like not so far off. I think he was like maybe like a win short or something.
Yeah, but being able to maybe register your deck just using the insert card with that came with the 5 precon is kind of sweet.
Yeah, definitely very cool. I think a lot of people were cheering for Florin. Incredible player, of course, as well. So not to say everybody who takes a 5 precon will do that well, but yeah, very very cool to see that be a thing. We also see Olympia here with 44%. This is essentially also Dawnblade Dory. I guess you get the Temper 2 hat, prized Galea, but I think overall Doranthea is the better Decimator Great Axe deck because with Refraction Bolters, the boots that let you get go again on hit, you can swing the axe twice if they don't block, and Decimator makes people not want to block. So I think that is like overall worth more than the slightly better headpiece that Olympia gets.
Okay, that's interesting. I'm not exactly sure which one's better yet either. But yeah, Olympia's hero text is kind of blank, right? Is kind of what it is. I guess Doranthea's hero text is also kind of blank. Does Doranthea care about weapons, or is it by sword actually?
It's by weapon. So you can break Refraction Bolters and get a second swing, like basically once per game, because you don't really play go again, but you get it on your boots. And then Olympia's upside is you get the prize Galea, the Temper 2 headpiece. So it's like pretty marginal either way. I think Doranthea is the better Great Axe deck, but it's close. I think you could probably play any warrior if you really wanted to, but Doranthea and Olympia are the ones that have the biggest reason to play it. I think the other ones you're just playing like a slightly worse version for kind of no reason, but you could.
So are you telling me if I like present Kasai and then played Decimator Axe, maybe that would work too?
I think that you're probably not losing that many win percentage. Like realistically, I think all the warriors, if you play it as Decimator, is probably pretty good. It's just there's no real reason to play the other ones. I was like sitting there being like, is there a Decimator Bolton deck? And I couldn't find a good reason to be Bolton.
Wait, but if we're Bolton, we can play Duty Bound Blitz with Decimator Axe.
But then you need charge cards.
Oh yeah, okay, never mind.
And that card blocks for 2.
Oh yeah, that card also doesn't block. Oh yeah, okay. Okay, never mind.
Yeah, yeah. It sounds good. I was like, surely there's something here. And then the more I looked at it, the more I was like, no.
I guess, yeah. I guess it has to be commons and rares. We can't play majestics.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So yeah, anyways, the Decimator decks were a huge overperformer this weekend, and I think maybe the biggest surprise.
Oh yeah, yeah. This deck was kind of not in anyone's radar, or at least like not within my circle of people that I was talking to. People weren't really talking about Decimator Axe, and then boom, London comes out and be like, "Oh yeah, Decimator Axe is legal. This card's like gross in CC sometimes, and this card's definitely gross in Sage."
Yeah, and I think the big thing about this was I think the decks that people were talking about was Briar, Guardians, maybe Enigma, and like some of the ninjas, Irify. And of those, you're really, really good into the decks that want to block. So that's Guardians and like pretty solid into Enigma. And then you're also okay into the aggro decks. And I think that was kind of like the angle for these warrior decks playing Great Axe is that you just absolutely crush Guardians, and then you just have good numbers into other stuff, and you have really good equipment too. You get all the Unity equipment that's essentially temper 2 if you block with another card, which is really strong.
Then I guess you want to move on and talk about the top 8 for London.
Yeah, we can do that. So in London's top 8, we have a Bravo Flattering Showman in Oldham, 2 KOs, 2 Dorenthias, an Olympia, and a Briar. So 3 of the Great Axe warriors, 2 Guardians, Showman much more aggressive, Oldham much more defensive, the KOs and the Briars. So yeah, kind of the decks that we talked about having good conversion rates were also the decks that made top 8. Notably, I guess like Ira had a solid conversion rate and didn't make it into top 8. But other than that, it was kind of all the decks that we said did really well going into day 2.
And honestly, this top 8 kind of makes a lot of sense, right? Like there's actually just like no surprises. None of like the underdog decks made it to the top 8. And this top, because this event was so big, like people really needed that like solid record to top 8 here.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, just this kind of was like our first look into the format, and I think outside of the Warriors, there was just like no real surprises. The finals was Paul Van Heysel on Briar and Kieran Lee on Dorenthia, and Paul Van Heysel brought it down. Shout out to Paul, friend of mine, and also he's on a tear. He won a calling just a few months ago on Gravy Bones, and now just won another calling. Very, very impressive stuff. So congrats, Paul.
That Briar list is on YouTube, right? I think the FAPTCG official website posted that Briar list on their YouTube channel, and it's I watched that whole video, and it goes pretty deep. It goes into the sideboard, and they discuss why they play each card, and they even suggest some like alternatives you can play in the deck. Honestly, that Briar deck looked kind of the most solid out of all of the Briar decks that I have seen so far. I guess small spoiler. That's probably the deck that I'm gonna bring as well, because I was on Briar before I watched that video, and then I was like looking for maybe like a couple more sideboard cards. Watched that video, and I'm like, his reasoning on playing every single card here is so solid. I don't even know if I can make any changes to this list.
Yeah. I think as the meta shifts, maybe there's some small adjustments, but the list is super solid. The basic idea behind the deck is that it blocks extremely well and is prioritizing that block value. But yeah, Bartaj Ziamba is a fantastic deck builder, and yeah, that video is awesome. They also have a Metafy guide, so if you're looking for even more information, you can check them out. But yeah, that Briar deck is very impressive, and I guess as we go into calling San Diego, we'll talk about the whole thing, but Briar continues to be the most represented, and I think as we go into PQs and all of that, I expect Briar to continue to do well. I don't think this deck is going anywhere.
No, I don't think it's going anywhere either. But let's talk about calling San Diego. I guess the most important or the most surprising thing about this calling will be the number of players that showed up. We had 171 players showing up at calling San Diego. This is a pretty small calling compared to what we saw in London with 755 players. So there's a dramatic drop off to how many players showed up. But I guess 171 players in general isn't actually like that much less than what a normal calling is, right?
I would say that this is like maybe slightly below average if this was an APAC calling. I think we often see around like 170 to 250 in a lot of the APAC callings. But for a North American calling around set release, this is definitely small. I would have expected at least like 350 players or so. It's interesting to think about why that is. It's possible that maybe like as a competitive format, people aren't as keen on Sage. I've heard some of that sentiment. I feel a little bit this way. I think Sage is great for the game. I like Classic Constructed and Draft more for competitive play, but Sage is okay. But I think the other factor here that's maybe in play is it was Valentine's Day on this calling, and part of the reason I mentioned that is that apparently I didn't verify this, but I heard that the showdown actually had more players than the calling, which perhaps and that was the day after Valentine's Day, so perhaps that had I don't want to say like the most weight, but perhaps that was like part of the picture.
Okay, okay, that makes sense. It also might be that because like we moved into showdowns, like the showdown prize pool is like kind of nice, and the calling prize pool hasn't really changed since last year, right?
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah, maybe the showdown's just like more approachable as like a lower commitment and also much better EV than it used to be. So yeah, maybe that is just like speaking to the success of showdowns. It's a little hard to say. I will be curious to see how future Sage callings do. I don't think that we know of any coming up. I believe the next events coming up are all CC, but I'm sure that we will see more Silver Age callings in the future at some point.
That's fair. That's fair. The only one that I know of, at least the one that I was thinking about going, will be Shanghai. Right? Shanghai is a sage calling.
Oh, is it Silver Age? Okay, I didn't realize that. Okay.
I think so. I think so. That's right before PT Yokohama. So I was looking into it, and I have a feeling it was. But that was like a couple of weeks ago. So I'll have to double. We can just double check now.
It is calling day one, open entry, Silver Age. I just looked it up.
Yeah, yeah. So it is Sage. So we do get to see Sage in action right before Yokohama and going into the PT.
Yeah, so that'll be definitely interesting, and I'm curious what the turnout for that will be. I'm also thinking about going to that event. The proximity to Yokohama, both like physically and time wise, is pretty attractive. And I think a lot of people who are planning to go to Yokohama are kind of eyeing that calling as an opportunity to play another event and also just practice for the PT and kind of test out whatever you're cooking in Sage in a larger field and see how it goes.
For us Canadians, it's actually great because they just announced that we don't actually need to apply for like a visitor's visa to go.
Yeah, yeah, that's huge. So yeah, I'm probably looking at doing that. I kind of waited too long on my Yokohama flight, so they're a little bit expensive. And when I checked yesterday, I think it was only $200 extra if I go like Vancouver to Shanghai, Shanghai to Yokohama, Yokohama back to Vancouver. And I'm like, oh, if it's only $200 extra, gotta be worth it.
Okay, yeah, that's actually kind of sick. I'll be in Japan already at that time, so I'm thinking about going from Japan to Shanghai and back to Japan.
Yeah, makes sense. I think that's also a really solid option. So yeah. Okay, back to
San Diego.
San Diego.
We already said that the most represented deck here is Briar at 37 copies, but we do get to see the heroes that people think are good at this point. We have 20 KOs right underneath and 14 Kanos. We have 12 Phis and 10 Dorenthias. And then we go to the single digits. We have 8 Enigmas, 8 Oldims, 7 Bravos, 6 Fives, and 5 Terras. I have a feeling though that we kind of should be grouping all the Guardians together because like there's not that much of a incentive to play, let's say, like Oldhim over Terra or Terra over Bravo or Bravo over Oldhim, right? Like I feel like they're almost all the same kind of category of decks.
Yeah, to me, Oldhim and Terra feel very close. They tend to be like really blocky. Oldhim has like a little better fatigue math with the Earth React, and Terra has access to the mites and a little bit better pressure. Showman, I think, is the deck that is capable of being built differently. I think that Showman tends to be a little more assertive and can really lean on that dominate ability. And some of the Showman decks I've been seeing have not been playing many of the 4 blocks and instead leaning more like aggressive deck, pummel, dominate big stuff. So I think that Showman is a little bit of its own beast, but I think Oldhim and Terra are very, very close.
Okay, that's a good take. That's a very good take. Oh, and we also have Volda on the, with 4 copies, which is another Guardian, and this one just loses the element types but gain 1 life, and is, at least from what I know, is just also another blocky deck. But do you know any other information about a Volda Sage deck doing anything different?
Volta gets access to dominate through the seismic surges, so I think she's like kind of in a similar vein to Showman, where I think both of them are slightly more assertive. They still block really well, they still have good equipment, but they can hit you a little bit harder. I believe that Volta is quite solid into KO because of the draw discard giving you seismic surges, and not the most meta deck at the moment, but you're also very good in Delexi because Death Dealer just draws a million cards and you get a bunch of free resources.
That's fair. That's fair. Yeah, Volda being a true counter to these the Rangers playing
Death Dealer.
Death Dealer. Yeah.
So yeah, not too many huge surprises. I think that this mostly mirrors kind of what we saw just the week before in London. KO doing well, so being more represented, Briar doing well. Kano might come as a bit of a question mark, but there was 4 Kanos that made day 2 in London with a 17% conversion rate, so a bit above. And we also saw Jacob Clements and Arthur Trahay make the finals of the showdown, both on Kano, both on similar decks. Jacob Clements won the showdown on Kano. Shout out to Jacob. He has been on an absolute tear this year. And I think with that little bit of information, seeing Kano third most represented is perhaps not super surprising.
That's fair. That's fair. It's also definitely, he's definitely a wizard, right? In a sense of like, if someone's just not prepared to play against this deck, they will just explode. Like, you don't have some spell void when you're supposed to, or when you don't, if you don't have any like Norrune hoods or just like Norrune in general, you just like immediately lose to this deck, right? Like, the amount of power that Kano gets is like comparable to what it did in CC when he first came out, minus the books.
Yeah. I think decks need AB, Spell Void, Arcane Polarities, some combination of these effects. I think you need quite a bit of tech for Kano to have a solid matchup. And even then, Kano is really, really good. Maybe we can move into day 2.
Let's talk about the day 2 conversion rates. So 48 players made day 2, which is roughly like 25%. Is that right?
Yeah, slightly
more, less,
slightly more, like 27, if I had to guess, something like that.
Sure, but yeah, roughly 25% got them move on to day 2, and we see 12 Briars at 32%. We see 8 KOs at 40%. We have 6 Doranthia at 60% conversion rate. This is insane, right? Like 60% conversion rate on a Doranthia that was a relatively large representation of the field, making day 2. So Decimator Axe definitely proving to be a really strong deck in this format.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then we also see Kano at 5 copies at 36%, 4 Enigmas at 50%, another 60% at Terra, but there's only 3 copies. And we see Bravo, what's his second name?
Flattering Showman.
Bravo Flattering Showman, 3 copies at 43%. And we see 2 Lexis. We didn't even talk about Lexi in the metagame breakdown. And we see 2 Lexis making day 2. That's huge.
Absolutely. I think Lexi is a hero that I really enjoy. I wrote an article about this for FabTCG. The Lexi decks that seemed to be doing well were more Redline, which was closer to the list that I posted on Patreon previously, but I was sort of like working with the new cards in the LSS article. I think they kind of both have merits. Lexi's really, really good when people want to block against you. You're kind of like good at going over top of the blocky decks, and you can race the aggro decks. But I think the problem that you have is your armor is so much weaker defensively than a lot of the other aggressive decks. And so like a deck like KO that just has like a huge fridge and hits you really hard tends to come out a little ahead in the race. So I think that Lexi is like definitely in this A tier of decks. She's really powerful, and her ceiling might be the highest in the format. Like when you chain multiple snapshots, it gets pretty gross pretty fast. You can do like 30 damage turns. I've done this multiple times, but yeah, a little bit the equipment holds her back a little bit, I think.
That makes sense. And it's also kind of hard to do that on like the first two turns of the game, right? Like this format feels like maybe if you're an aggro deck, you only have 2 to 3 turns to present your big turns. And I find that Lexi is one of those decks where if you don't get to Arsenal and then start your turn off, you do kind of have a hard time to like find your snapshot and a lightning card and a resource card together.
Yeah, I agree. I think that she's like overall very consistent output, but it feels like you need to do like the really crazy turns to come out ahead as Lexi. If you just do the consistent turns, you're kind of doing similar-ish stuff to Briar, maybe slightly more efficient, but you don't have all the equipment. And that equipment life buffer is huge in 20 life VAP.
That makes sense. That makes sense. Okay, then do you want to move on to the top 8?
Yeah. So in the top 8, we see 2 Briars, Brody and Michael Fung. We also see an Enigma, Jude Cornett. We see Evan Bridges on KO. We see Jacob Clements and Alexander Vore on Kano. We see Yona Overholt on Doranthea, and we see Tao Tao Chu on New. So for the most part, this is kind of what we would expect. A lot of the same top decks. I think the real notable things here are no Guardians made top 8. That's like a little bit surprising. And we also saw New. So Tao Tao showing up with New, which is very, very exciting. And yeah, I'm very curious about this new deck. It looked to be very defensively slanted, trying to fatigue the aggro decks. And then you have just a few chi in the deck so that you're able to play the Guardians big blues and kind of target them that way.
Mm-hmm. I didn't get to watch all of the deck lists that got posted on YouTube for New yet, but just recently they posted the new deck list that did well at this calling. So if you are interested about this list, they did post a video explaining the whole deck, and I think the video was like almost like 20 minutes long, if I'm not mistaken. So
yeah, that sounds about right.
Yeah, it's pretty comprehensive for being a deck list on YouTube.
Yeah, and I would check it out. Tao Tao is a fantastic player and very much an assassin expert. I've seen him play Uzuri and New in CC and Marionette and now New in Sage. Just very well known for assassin.
Yeah, sorry, I'm super wrong. It's not 20 minutes long. It is an hour and 30 minutes long.
That sounds like Tao Tao. He loves to go fully into detail and very deep in the weeds. Very, very smart guy, thinks a lot about his decks. And this is one that I'm a little bit curious about. I want to try out this new deck a little bit.
Yeah, I thought it was 20 minutes because I've watched 20 minutes of this at 2x speed, which means I've watched 40 minutes of this video.
That's pretty fair. From what I saw of the stream games, the Doranthea matchup looks a little bit tough. You don't have quite enough pressure, and also she kind of devalues your blocks, which isn't great for you. But the Briar matchup looked pretty solid. I actually thought Tao Tao was going to win this game. He ultimately, I guess spoilers if you don't want to know what happens in this match, skip ahead a little bit. He ultimately ends up losing to an interaction that I don't think he seemed to be aware of based on him like reading the card. And I think you can hear him kind of going like, wait. Basically, there's a flourish on an attack for 3 go again, and then it gets lightning pressed up to 9. And he only has 3. He only blocks it for 3 and has a 3 block D-react. I think if he blocks this for 6, he actually ends up being able to cover it with a D-react and then being able to cover the next attack as well, and probably gets there on fatigue. So yeah, very, very close game.
That makes sense. The interaction in Briar with Flourish and Lightning Press is like the most disgusting thing in the Sage format. If the attack already has go again, like what do you do? Like, do you overblock the first attack? Do you just block it for 3? Because the Lightning Press is now a 0 for 6 that guarantees damage. You overblock the first attack, they just Lightning Press the second attack. You you block the first attack for only 3, they just lightning press the first attack. Like, you just got forked.
Yeah, it's really nasty. I think in that exact spot, because he has the D react and because he knows it's the lightning press, he can get there. I think it was either fused or they're just like down to the number of cards in deck where you can know. It was well known that there was lightning press. I'm pretty sure it got fused. But yes, this interaction is really, really scary. And if you don't have a D react for it, like good luck blocking this damage.
And yeah, honestly, that's the big reason why people are just playing yellow blue flourish now, right?
Yeah. Also, it I guess not on it. I guess like well, even on its own, it can buff the weapon is the other big thing. So these decks are playing Starfall, and so long as you have another lightning card to go with it, Flourish will apply to the weapon. So it's pretty easy to turn on.
Okay, enough about the new deck. Is there any other decks here that you wanted to talk about?
Nothing else that I super want to highlight. I will say that the Jude Cornette into Jacob Clemens games, Enigma versus Kano, are incredible to watch. There's one in semifinals, and I think one of the last rounds of Swiss. I don't know if it's exactly the last round, but it's late day 2. Really, really impressive performances from Jacob Clemens, narrowly getting them both times. One of the thoughts I had watching this matchup was I was like, man, with how close these games were, and like Jude was on AB3, he had a Oasis Respite and Moon Chakra as prevention effects as well, and plus all the ward from Enigma, like very, very close to being able to fatigue Jacob. I kind of wonder if you can play like AB4 and maybe like fit like a couple extra blues somewhere in the deck, and I wonder if that's enough to have a pretty solid Kano matchup. It's yeah, quite interesting. Generally, Kano's really good into the slow decks, but Enigma is sort of like uniquely positioned with all the ward to have even more prevention effects and counterplay than like say the Guardians, who tend to fall pretty flat against Kano, I would say overall.
Yeah, that would be interesting. I wonder if that just makes it harder for Enigma to have a sideboard against the other decks in the format. And
Yeah.
I feel like Wizards always does this to a format where, you have to kind of decide how much sideboard you want to bring against Kano. And at least for this PQ season, it does feel like you definitely need to be prepared for Kano. But Kano always excels in formats when people aren't prepared. And this format feels like Kano is going to excel even if you are prepared.
Yeah, I think if you're not prepared, you're going to get blown out of the water. And if you are prepared, you still got a real game on your hands. I do think that the Kano deck seems tough to play overall. Like, I think between understanding the aggressive matchups and how to play into those, and then also understanding the slower decks, it's there's quite a bit of pitch stacking. There's quite a bit of like stuff like that going on. So if you want to play Kano, I would recommend that you practice and make sure that you have reps on the deck. It is not the easiest deck to play, but I think when it's in the hands of a master, the deck seems really powerful. And Kano does eventually bring down the deck, bring down the whole event in the hands of Jacob Clements, who also won the showdown in London, also on Kano. So very impressive performance from Jacob. Also very impressive performance from Kano. And I guess just on this note, I've heard that, didn't verify, but I've heard that Kano also won the showdown and the Sage Gold Foil event in San Diego. So Kano has won 4 out of 5 of the kind of like, I guess, events that have had gold foils on the line so far, which is crazy. We don't usually see a deck win this number of event, like this percentage of events. Like 4 out of 5 is really, really impressive. Even when we had like Zen, I don't think he was winning quite this percentage of events.
Yeah. And I think it was Ryan Brown who won the showdown at San Diego on Kano. So gotcha. Kano has to be there has to be some kind of card in Kano that probably need to be hit by the ban list, right? That's kind of how it feels like to me right now. I remember playing a game against you on Oldham that was like playing Rainbow Fruits of the Forests, and that wasn't enough to fatigue a Kano. So that felt really bad.
Yeah, it's definitely interesting. Snapback or maybe like Absorb and Ether seem like cards you could hit. The power card in there is definitely Emeritus Scolding, but they play all 6 copies of it, and it just does so much damage on your opponent's turn. I don't know if you can ban Emeritus Scalding, but I don't think Kano can be a deck without Emeritus Scalding. So I don't know if that is quite the right card to ban, but it does feel like maybe there is something that should be looked at to take him down. The gloves are also really powerful. Unyielding Grip, when your hand is empty, you get to block for 3. Not so relevant in the slower matchup where Kano really, really thrives, but really does help his aggressive matchups. I think that without these gloves, he would probably be a fair bit weaker into the aggro deck. So that could maybe be an option as well, but that has a lot wider reaching consequences.
Do you know the card that I want gone from Kano? It's the one where you opt for the amount of damage you do. I don't know what the name of this card is.
Aether Spindle.
Aether Spindle. Aether Spindle is always the card, at least playing against Kano, is the card that I hate the most. Kano plays that card and you have to, like, you were like committed to not ABing that the damage that turn, and you look at Aether Spindle and you're like, you have to prevent some damage of this, or like you're going to explode. Like it's like, I hate that card so much.
Yeah, Aether Spindle, definitely a powerful card too. So yeah, I think that there's probably something that can get taken from Kano. But yeah, Kano looks to be the best thing to be doing, or amongst the best things to be doing. But again, with that caveat, I think he's pretty tough to play. And I think people are going to be bringing more and more tech for him. So you really want to be well versed on Kano if you're going to be bringing him. I guess on this note, do you want to move into our final section where we talk about kind of Sage PQs in general, what we're playing, what we think strong?
Yeah, let's do that. I guess before we start that conversation, for the Sage PQs, it's going to run from February 21st to March 1st. Today we're recording on February 18th, which means that the Sage PQs will be happening, has happened when this video goes up. And then we're going to have the classic constructed PQs from March 7th to the 22nd. So everywhere around the world, we're only going to have PQs for Sage first and then CC later. So we'll talk about CC before the CC portion of these PQs start. And I guess before what we're playing, the promos for this PQ is kind of nice. We get the Teklo and Ems as the top 4 pricing, and we get Bittering Thorns Red, which is a card that was been annoying to find for like the longest time, and now we get it as a top 8 promo, which is both kind of nice, and at the same time, man, this is like a $4 card right now. It's like I kind of wish they gave us slightly better top 8 promos.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah, these cards are kind of nice. I have been playing some Teklo. I don't think he is the strongest deck. I think he is a heck of a lot better than he used to be, though, and I wouldn't be surprised if we see a meta where Teklo is good eventually. Is kind of how I feel about that deck, and these cards are really sweet. They look great, so I kind of want to pick up some of these if I can.
Yeah, I agree with you. Teklo-Vosson's been very impressive. So yeah, these promos are reasonable. So I guess for the first 2 weeks, what are you playing in the Sage format, or what have you been practicing with?
I've tried a bit of KO. I've tried some Lexi. I've tried some Kano. I think I'm probably going to be playing Kano, which just sounds like I'm playing the best deck. I was actually just playing Kano because I wanted to try something else, and it's probably the most fun I've had in the format, but it turns out that he also seems powerful, so that makes the decision a lot easier. Maybe a small chance I just play Lexi to have fun. I'm sort of, I'm probably not taking this Silver Age PQ the most seriously, and instead focusing on CC. I'm not super worried about qualifying for Vegas, as I should be able to get there on World Tour points. So yeah, I'm sort of looking to enjoy this PQ season, try stuff out, have fun, and that probably means Kano for me.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, Kano is going to be a pretty strong deck in the format, so you're not going to be. It's not going to be like a mistake to play either deck. I think. Yeah, I'm going to be playing Briar. As I said already, I'm like 90% sure that I know the exact deck list I'm playing. It's going to be the one that got posted with the Bartosz deck, essentially. That deck is so solid, and I might not play Skizik. I don't believe in that card that much, so maybe that's the card that gets cut. But I might open up my Lexi Armory deck that I have on the floor here to put the Skizik in. We'll see. I'm not that big of a believer on that card yet.
Fair enough.
Do you want to talk about? So you have a section here that says what's powerful in Sage.
Yeah, so I guess just sort of like I think that the format's starting to solidify. It's still early though, and we still are seeing surprises. We saw Doranthea Great Axe, we saw New come out of the woodworks, and I think that it wouldn't surprise me if we see some other decks that people end up bringing, and I'm sure some of our listeners might be working on a deck or thinking about brewing a deck. So maybe just like really briefly, I think there's like some pretty common themes amongst the decks that do well in Sage. And I think that basically the first one is equipments. If you have powerful equipment that's worth a lot of value, usually defensively, but sometimes also aggressively, like the ninja equipment blocks and then does a bunch of damage, that is huge and feels almost like a prerequisite to being good in this format. I think evasion is really good in this format. So like Kano is evasive, Azalea is evasive but gets countered by equipment now. Rhinar is a deck that I think hasn't quite panned out, but Intimidate is really good in 20 life fab, and I think Rhinar is actually like pretty close. I think he's overall a little bit worse than KO is my current take, but if your deck has evasion, that's like a huge plus. We also see this with the rune blades and their split damage. The arcane damage is a huge pain in the format. And the other one is just doing a lot of damage or blocking really well. You kind of need to be on one of the poles, I think, where mid range is really hard to play in 20 life fab. So you either want to end the game in 2 turns or be really, really dedicated to blocking. And you kind of, yeah, you want to be doing one or the other. If you're in the middle, maybe somebody will find something, but it seems really hard.
Oh yeah, I feel like it's also this thing of like there's just not enough sideboard space to be in the middle. Where like to be in the middle, you need to be able to block well against the decks that are aggressive, and then you need to have the evasive damage against the blocky decks. And you just like don't have enough sideboard space to do that right now.
Yeah, fully agree. So if you're looking to brew a deck or bring a deck that you've been playing, I think that or maybe looking to brew in the future, these are good things to keep in mind, and I think things to look for when evaluating strong decks, and certainly things that I'm thinking about when, like as we go forward to Yokohama and maybe the format gets adjusted, I'm trying to figure out what to play. I'm going to be looking at equipments, decks with evasion, and decks that do a lot of damage or block really well. Those are kind of like the starting points. That's not to say that will encompass every deck ever, but I think these are really, really good starting points if you're looking for something powerful to do in the format.
Okay, that makes sense. Who is currently doing that, right? Like, what do you think is going to be like the best decks for the PQ season going in this weekend, essentially?
So I think we kind of have top tier decks and then decks that we think are good, meaning you can take them, expect to do well. There's a whole bunch of other decks that are maybe like viable, or this format is so wide and so young that it's a little hard to say. But this is sort of like our first impression of at least the top of the format. So if you want to play aggressive decks, I think your choices are Briar, KO, or Kano. I don't know if Kano is exactly an aggressive deck, but he does end the game very fast and have evasion. So I think he's closest to an aggressive deck. But I think that these 3 are kind of the best proactive decks in the format at the moment.
That makes a lot of sense. Yeah, I don't know if Kano is a proactive deck. I think he's definitely going to be in the evasion slot of the things you were talking about earlier, right? He's like a very evasive deck more than an aggressive deck, I think.
He's kind of both.
Yeah, okay. Like Kano blows you up in 2 turns. Okay, sure. The 2-turn combo deck.
Yeah. So yeah, I think if you want to play something proactive, these are probably your best choices. On the defensive side, what would you be bringing, Jay?
Oh, if I'm playing anything defensive, it's gonna be Decimator or Great Axe. This card is so good, and yeah, Doranthea is definitely gonna be the hero of choice, at least for now. But Olympia does also feel kind of similar, and you get a better headpiece. So depending on who you exactly think is going to show up to your PQ, maybe just having that headpiece without Unity is a little bit better. But yeah, as long as you're playing Decimator or Great Axe and a bunch of 3 blocks, you'll be able to kind of fatigue everyone out and then beat the other fatigue decks. And I think that's the big upside you get from playing Doranthea is that you're not actually like the best fatigue deck, but you're probably the best deck that beats fatigue that also fatigues, if that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah. You're favored into all the fatigue decks, and then you get to do a similar thing to the other blocky decks. I think you're like probably you're definitely a little worse into Briar than say like the Guardians, but you get to crush the Guardians, which is pretty big upside.
Oh yeah, it's a huge upside. It's a huge upside, man. The Guardians are playing 4 blocks right now. Like Decimator Great Axe is so good into these like cards that block. Like, oh, ew. I don't want to play against a Decimator Great Axe.
Yeah, and a lot of the decks are playing like Staunch Response or Unmovables as well, and you can kind of get around this by blocking with a card and then blocking with like Staunch Response, but you can't like if they do like Decimator Great Axe for 9 with like a Felling Swing, you can't just like cover this with Red Staunch because it gets halved. I mean, it doesn't have the plus, but still, it's very, very, very annoying.
Yeah, and then if you're blocking with essentially a card and then Staunch Response, you're not getting value from your Staunch Response anymore. So like that also feels bad. Yeah, there's just like no good way out into Decimator Great Axe.
Yeah.
This card has to get banned at one point, right? Like this card feels so bad to play against.
Yeah, yeah, I agree.
The power level on Decimator Great Axe, I feel like isn't actually that high, but like the feels bad that happens when your opponent presents Decimator Great Axe I think is too high.
Yeah, I think that could definitely be the case. It's like tough because like I think the whole class kind of relies on this weapon, and they probably aren't a deck without it. But yeah, Decimator Great Axe definitely feels like a power outlier in terms of weapons in the format for sure. So I guess of these top tier decks, we've talked a lot about Briar, we've talked a lot about Kano and Dory. We should probably talk a little bit about KO. So why KO? Well, KO has very good equipment, a lot of armor block available, and KO kind of gets to do like almost everything that he gets to do in CC. You don't have swing bigs, but you do have 2-for-7s like Sirens of Safe Harbor and Rough Up. You have a whole bunch of 2-for-7s, which are almost as good as 2-for-8s. And you don't get Blood Rush Bellow, which is a big loss, but I mean, we're playing Silver Age. Nobody gets Majestics. So KO is actually just like super powerful. The fact that you get to play, I don't know, Run Roughshod, Bare Fangs, Wild Ride. Like the output on this deck is crazy, and you have an amazing equipment suite to back it up. So KO is sort of this like really powerful aggro deck with great equipment, which is kind of what you want. In a lot of ways, it's kind of similar to Briar. I think you have a little bit less flexibility with how you play your hands because you have like draw discard and you have no blocks. You probably have a little bit higher ceiling as well, though. And I think that's kind of like the trade-offs between Briar and KO. I think that if you want an aggressive deck, these are both great. I think Briar might give you a little bit more agency, but they're both super, super good. And I've been seeing some KO decks develop that want to block pretty well. I think some of the calling top 8 decks are playing like Test of Might, Clash of Might, this kind of stuff, so that you can block, get some mites, and get some extra value that way. So it's just like an extremely good aggressive numbers deck.
That makes sense. Yeah, I think the one card that's kind of keeping me away from this is definitely the no blocks, like the Wild Rise and the Bare Fangs. Is that what they're called?
Yeah, Bare Fangs. And Bare Fangs, they're both just like so good that you have to play them. Bare Fangs is like a 2-for-9, and the yellow's a 2-for-8 with the KO might, and then Wild Ride's like a 2-for-7 go again. So they're just like they're so good that you have to play them. But yeah, you get some awkward hands or some spots where you would like to block to conserve life total, and you kind of just get priced into playing your hand. I will say, draw discarding Sirens is sweet.
Okay, draw discarding Sirens is really, really good. But I feel like the games where you draw the no blocks and a deck just attacks you for 12 and you go, well, I block 6, take 6, and lose the game happens a little too often for me to want to play this the Brutes.
Yeah, I feel similarly. I guess outside shot, maybe I will play KO if the deck I have in the back of my head is good. I kind of wonder if I can play like a blocky KO deck that pummels people. This is why I wanted to play Rhinar originally, because the chess piece is instant speed, get a resource. So you actually get to do like the Tunic pummel thing. And like maybe you can just play like Clash cards, and like your only draw discard is Bare Fangs. And then you get to board in the Wild Rides and place out the blocky Clash cards for like Enigma and stuff. It's probably not good, but I want to try it.
Okay, that's a pretty interesting idea. Yeah, the chess piece is really, really powerful from Pen. I forgot the name of that card, but
Predatory Plating. It's a Guardwell 2 chess piece. If you have a 6 or more power attack, you can break it and you get a resource.
Yeah, we talked about that card quite a bit last episode too. But yeah, that card's so good. Instant speed, yeah, that's why they banned the tap chess piece, right?
Yeah, Old Knocker.
Old Knocker, yeah, that's what it's called. And yeah, they're just like, yeah, we don't want instant speed resources. And then yeah, KO got instant speed resources. Yeah, great, yeah, sweet. That also blocks for 2. Yeah, clearly fair.
Yeah, definitely very impressive. Okay, let's move on. So that's our top tier: Briar, KO, Dorinthia, Kano. Are there any good decks that you're excited about?
Of the decks that we have listed here, I do want to talk about the Oldhim and Terra. That's the deck that I've been working on a little bit more. Clearly, it is just the super defensive Guardian lists that wants to block everything out, and you just swing Titan's Fist until they lose, or you swing the other one, Sledge of Anvil, until they lose. I feel like blocking people out in this format is pretty good mainly because the sideboard space is so tight that if obviously these aggro decks decide to play like enough evergreens and anti-fatigue cards essentially, then you're actually gonna be not favored in those matchups anymore. But that's actually just not the case. These decks aren't allowed to play these anti-fatigue cards, or they can't play too many of them, or their deck will fall apart. Things like Evergreen requires blues to play it, and so on. And then these decks also don't have access to Remembrance because that's a super. So these fatigue decks get a lot of edge just by having a format with smaller card pool and a tighter, a 55 card limit. So just being able to block is just really, really strong. And I would play Oldhim if I get the chance, because Fruits of the Forest is such a good card into everyone right now.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. I think that these Guardians are still really strong. I think that Kano and Dorinthia, for me, are kind of the reasons that these decks have... I think people kind of thought the Guardians were top tier, and I think going into London, that was very much the narrative and maybe even the case. And I think they've kind of come down a notch. We saw none of them top 8 in San Diego, but they're still very, very good. And I guess in that vein, I also think Bravo Flattering Showman is really good if you want a little bit more of an assertive style Guardian deck. So a little different space, but also in that Guardian.
Yeah, if you need to beat Dorinthia, I would prefer Bravo, but if I don't need to, then I would prefer Oldhim.
Enigma too.
I don't think Terra is that good because Oldhim has the ability to convert your blues into like 2 prevention against the axe, where Terra doesn't actually have that out.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think one of the big things for Terra was that your sledge math is really good because you get the extra might, so you're good into Oldhim. But with Oldhim not being quite as good anymore, and Dorinthia being kind of the fatigue deck to target, Terra probably loses a little bit of the appeal.
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes a lot of sense. Otherwise, I think Tao Tao's new deck might be a thing, right? I don't know if this deck is good yet. I haven't tested it enough or at all. And the deck list came out as of recording 11 hours ago. So that's just not... I was asleep 11 hours ago.
Yeah, Tao Tao's new deck is definitely an interesting one. We talked quite a bit about it, but it seems interesting. The milling cards off the top is really strong when you only have 40 cards in deck, and you get to recur some of those equipments. So that's really impressive. I guess on the assertive side, Fi and Ira, I think, are really solid choices as ninjas. I'm not quite sure what's better. Fi seems like a little higher ceiling. You get to play all of the draconic cards. You get like Lava Burst, Blaze Headlong, things like that. Ira gets to be Ira, so you get the +1. You're also like a little bit better at playing the Mask of Many Faces, Life of the Party, name Crazy Brew on your Tiger, or whatever attack type thing. But yeah, both of these ninjas seem quite strong. My impression playing against these ninjas, though, is like going second as these ninjas is so good, and the decks are so much worse when they have to go first because they don't necessarily block super well. But man, when I go second against Ira, it's like kind of miserable a lot of the time. There's like a lot of decks where I'm like, I do not want to be second against Ira because they just hit you super hard, and then you probably can't present lethal. and then they pop all their equipment and they kill you. This is like kind of how it feels if you're playing like an aggro mirror, anyways.
Yeah, yeah. Well, honestly, Fi kind of feels the same way. You give Fi
Yeah,
second, and they just like run at you, and then they keep on running at you. And they just don't even have to think about blocking sometimes, right? Like
yeah,
there are spots where I've seen where like, oh, I present like a bunch of stuff, and then Fi just like goes like, "Is that lethal? No, okay, no blocks." I hit you back for 16, and you're like, "Okay, yep, the game's over."
yeah, yeah. I think that like for me, Briar and KO feel like slightly better aggressive decks than the ninjas because your equipment blocks for a little more. You have a little bit better ability to block. Like Briar gets the embodiments of Earth and like Sigil of Suffering. That card is not fair. And then KO can play like some of the clash block cards. And I think having like a little bit of ability to do that, they can also get turn 0 equity. KO can make like Agility Might. Briar can get Rune Chans, make Embodiment of Lightning, ping you for arcane damage if you're not presenting AB. I think that these things make Briar and KO just a little stronger in my estimation. I think like going second, all of these decks are really similar, but going first, I think Briar and KO are just a little better.
That makes a lot of sense, actually. That makes a lot of sense, yeah. If Briar gets to develop like an embodiment of Earth on going first, kind of like nullifies the advantage of the aggro decks going second too, right? Because as long as you draw the non-blocked 3 blocks.
Yeah. Or like Arcane Seed's Life. Arcane Seed's Life is insane going first.
Oh, make 2 Rune Chants, gain a life, pass? Oh, that's not fair.
Yeah, you like do that, play another card, get an Embodiment of Lightning, your turn. Like that doesn't make I think you probably still rather go second, but that's big. Like that's really, really big. And I think just like being able to do this is huge. Whereas Fi and Ira, maybe sometimes you can leak a little bit of damage going first, but you really want to be second.
So I guess the last deck here to talk about will be Enigma. Like
Yep.
I not actually that impressed with Enigma so far. I'm not sure how you or what your testing experience with Enigma has been. I feel like this deck is really solid and good, but then there's so many good aggro decks that kind of like Enigma struggles against.
My understanding is that the ninjas are kind of terrible. Briar and KO are like playable but hard. And then your upside is that you beat up the Guardians. I think Dory is actually not terrible against you. Dorinthia surprisingly good at pushing damage with like the felling swings and the overpowers and stuff. Like when people want to block against her, she kind of puts you in the blender, and Enigma wants to do some blocking. So I'm not sure. Like I don't think the matchup's like bad, but it's not as great as you'd like it to be. And then maybe you can target Kano with the prevention. Yeah, I kind of agree. I feel like I haven't played very much Enigma. I feel like the people that I know that like Enigma tell me that Enigma is great, but the tournament and Enigma did make a top 8 at the Calling San Diego. But the like numbers on Enigma, if you look at like her win percentage across Calling London and San Diego, she was 48%. It's like, okay. So I'm not really sure how strong Enigma is, but I do think she's really solid. And I think if you want to play her, you can play her, and she's not embarrassing. She's at least like a solid pick. And I would maybe put Lexi in a similar spot here. To me, like Lexi and Enigma are maybe like a little bit of a step down of the other decks, but they're pretty good, and you can bring them and you can do well if you want to.
Okay. So there's one other deck. Yuki said I can't put her in good decks, but I think Azalea is going to be a good choice for PQs. And that being said, I feel like Azalea gets this like huge spike of being playing in an event that doesn't have that many rounds. So I feel like I wouldn't ever bring Azalea to a tournament that has like, let's say like 12 rounds or more, like a showdown or a calling. But if you only have to play like 4 rounds and then go into a top 8, or 5 rounds and go into a top 8, Azalea feels like a great choice for that. Like if you just high roll 3 people and then lose, go to top 8, then high roll 2 more, 3 more people, you win the event. That's so possible.
Yeah, I think Azalea definitely has the power level needed to win an event, and I guess we should say that I think that there's plenty of other Silver Age decks that we didn't talk about here or put on this list that I think are honestly good enough to win PQs, right? Like PQs are really different than callings, and yeah, there's just so many heroes in this format, so many things to be doing, so much unexplored. I think that depending on what you want to get out of this PQ season, there's a lot of other stuff that you can play and not feel embarrassed about and bringing. But I think that if your, I guess, sole goal is to do well and maximize your win rate, I think that picking something amongst the decks that we mentioned is probably the play.
Yeah, I agree with you. Like, if I really needed to win this PQ, I wouldn't play Azalea, but Azalea's I'm gonna put money on. Azalea's definitely gonna win a PQ somewhere. This deck is so gross. I've played like 4 games against Azalea in a row, and then I just like got blown up 4 games in a row because it's just like dominate arrows for like 12, then dominate arrow for like 12. You're just like, what do? You're just dead. Like, oh my god, infecting shots so unfair sometimes.
Yeah,
Ugh.
definitely. Yeah, the highs on Azalea are really, really high. I lost to Azalea, our friend Adam, on Azalea at the pre-con event. Oh, the frailties were insane. I had a wild ride with a Might. It's a yellow wild ride from Arsenal. Comes in for 5 instead of 6. I have a Vigor going into the turn, so I can play any 2 costs off the top. I draw a 3 cost. I reach for my chess piece and I go, my wild rides for 5 because there's a frailty. I can't send this attack for 7. I win the game if I can send the attack for 7, but it just fully blanks me being able to send that, and I have an inertia. It was so good. So good.
Look, it's so funny because the moment I think he beat you, he sent me a message and goes, "Oh my god, I beat Yuki."
I was just like in disbelief how good this is like the best frailty I've ever seen. It's so crazy. It was worth like 8. So good.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's crazy. That's actually so crazy. Yeah, there are some tokens that are it's so good. Frailty token being so good, huh? But it only works on the yellow wild ride, right?
It only turns off the chess piece on the yellow wild ride. Yeah.
Oh, that's crazy. That's still good.
Yeah. But yeah, Azalea definitely a solid hero. All right. Anything else here before we wrap up our episode?
No, I don't think so. I guess we can close off this episode by asking this question. Do you like this format?
I think this format's really good for the game, and I am glad that they have introduced it. I do not personally enjoy playing this format that much. I don't think it's like, I think it is a lot better than Blitz, but significantly less enjoyable than Classic Constructed and Draft. I think that if Sage was the main format, I don't know if I would be playing Flesh and Blood, but I like the other Flesh and Blood formats enough, and if I play Sage sometimes, I'm okay with that. It's kind of how I feel.
Okay, yeah, I'm very close to what you think there as well. I have a friend that doesn't usually come out to like locals. He's too busy. But he comes out to like a pre-release every once in a while. I sent him a message explaining the 3 formats, and I feel like this is I explained it pretty well for these 3 formats. So I wrote draft is like scrappy fights with cards on similar power level, like the commons, rares. In a singular draft format, it's going to be pretty like close to each other. It's like CC is like planning how you want to kill your opponent and doing the most unfair stuff so your opponent ends up dying. And then Sage is like you run at your opponent full force and hope they fall over and die.
Yeah, I agree. I think in particular some of the aggressive mirrors and the way that the format really pulls you to the extremes is, and mid-range is sort of absent, are like not so enjoyable. It feels like my favorite thing in Flesh and Blood is like some of the back and forth where you kind of trade hands and position for like who gets ahead and who gets the winning endgame. But it feels like that's so condensed in Silver Age that's just like, I play a turn, we're in the endgame. Can you beat it? No, too bad. Like you just have so little runway that like often just the first like 2 hands you draw kind of decides the game. If you have a all blue hand or an all red hand, like the game's probably just over unless your opponent draws just as bad as you. And I don't love that about Silver Age. It's just like a little bit too flippy for me. But that being said, we did see a lot of very familiar names in the top eights, especially in San Diego. So I think that there still is skill expression in this format. It's just maybe less than in some of the like in CC and draft, and I think also maybe a little bit less enjoyable than CC and draft.
Okay, that makes sense. I think the biggest downside for me for this format is that like I feel like the one of the best parts about Flesh and Blood is you draw 4 cards and it doesn't do anything. You still get to keep on playing the game in CC or like even in draft. Like you draw like 4 just like duds. You get to convert it and then continue the game.
Yeah, even in the aggro mirrors, it's like you don't want to draw a hand that just has to block out and pass and let your aggro opponent go take a full another turn. That's really not what you want to do in CC. But it feels okay. There's spots where you can't do that, but I think that there's also lots of games where you can do that and you can win. Whereas in Silver Age, it feels like just such a death sentence. Like there's just like so many things that happen in Silver Age where it's just like, yep, like not gonna overcome this ever, and that's like much more diminished in CC, I think.
Yeah, I agree. It's like if you're playing Fi and CC, if you draw a hand with no starters, you can set up. If you draw a hand in Sage on Fi that has no starters, you just blow up.
Yeah. It just feels really, really punishing, and in a way that isn't always in your control. But yeah, that being said, I think that like the most like highest competitive integrity format, not every format has to be the, you know, the pinnacle of competitive play. I think that there's lots of reasons to include formats in card games, and it's good to appeal to a wide audience. And I think Silver Age has been a huge success for that, as far as I can tell. Like we said, just like locally, seeing so many new faces come out, people's partners come out. To me, that is huge. I've also just like heard so many people asking about the game because of Silver Age and for no other reason. And I think all of that is really, really big. And I think if I had my way, I would hope that Silver Age continues to be the showdown format on Sundays at big events. Probably has some number of callings and maybe the occasional Pro Tour appearance. Like maybe if we have like 2 Pro Tours, our draft 1 Pro Tour is Silver Age a year or something like that would feel pretty okay to me. And yeah, and like maybe there's like some store events and stuff that are Silver Age. So you do kind of see Silver Age go all the way up the competitive play ladder, but it's not the focus, and it's draft and CC take up a bigger portion.
You know, I've been seeing this sentiment on like Twitter, X, and stuff like that, where I wish that the Sage tournaments just had more rounds. And it's like not hard to do that, right? Like it's not hard to add 3 more rounds of Sage into a calling, with like because the rounds are so much shorter.
Yeah. I think that's the other way to go that could like make me enjoy Sage more. You have more rounds so that they are the variance gets diminished because you have like more losses to give. I've also heard people say the idea of like you play best of 2 Sage, so you play both sides of a matchup, going first, going second. And you know, if it's like a mixed format event, you could have the Sage rounds worth 1 point, or the Sage wins worth 1 point, CC worth 2 points. That's like another way to reduce variance. But I think that just like having some way to effectively play more games of Sage and spread out that variance a little bit would also make me enjoy the format a little bit more. It just feels like a little bit like Magic the Gathering, where sometimes you just get run over, but it's best of 1, so that just feels kind of bad. Where I feel like if it was best of 3, it'd be like it's still swingy, but at least I get like more shots at winning.
Yeah, that makes sense. Honestly, BO3 would make sense. Best of 3 would make so much sense for this format. Like, I feel like Sage is like a regular card game, right? Like,
yeah. Absolutely. It feels like, I think if you compare Sage to like any other card game, it just feels pretty normal. But you compare it to what we're used to in Flesh and Blood, it feels a bit like, whoa, like these games are swingy. It's pretty high variance.
Yeah, it's like, man, I got unlucky. I lost the game. And you think about it, card games, you're supposed to get unlucky and lose some games.
Yeah. So yeah, I'm very curious to see what the future of Sage will be. Overall, I think the format is seems like a success to me. I hope that hopefully the calling San Diego attendance isn't like an indication of something like like what we saw happen with Living Legend, but I kind of don't think that's the case. I think that Sage will stick around as this like onboarding format that has some amount of higher level competitive play.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you on that part. Yeah, let's wrap it up here then.
Thank you all for listening. Hope you found this helpful, and best of luck to all of you at your upcoming Sage PQs, and I guess CCPQs are calling Montreal just a little bit down the road. If you want to get in touch with us, you can find us on social media. Jay is at Ueda J on Twitter. I'm at Yuki Lee Bender on Twitter and Blue Sky. You can find us on Patreon, patreon.com/onthebobble, or you can email us directly at onthebobble@gmail.com and submit all of your questions there. But yeah, that's going to be a wrap, and we will see you all next week.
Yeah, why not? I'll talk about this a little bit. This last like week or so, man, all I've been doing was the Mr. Beast, the Super Bowl commercial thing. I've kind of given up on it at this point. Maybe I go back on it and try and catch back up, but honestly, taking like a 2-day break, I feel like I can't catch up anymore. Do you know what this Mr. Beast challenge is?
No, I don't think I do.
Okay, so Mr. Beast during the Super Bowl commercial, or Mr. Beast had a Super Bowl commercial, and basically the commercial just said, "Oh, there's a lot of riddles in this commercial. If you solve all of it, you'll win this $1 million that's in this video."
That's
And
crazy.
yeah, and all you have to do is message him the secret code to win the million. And it's been what, a week and a half now, like 10 days since that ad gone. It's been on the Super Bowl. So, and it's still not solved, and people are still working on it. And I worked on it for about 3.5 days, and I got maybe like a third of the way, at least from like what people are talking about, and it's used up like 30 hours of my time, and I'm not even close. So yeah, I don't know if I want to spend more time on it, but $1 million is $1 million. So maybe I go back at it and work on this a little bit more after the Sage PQ.
Do it between rounds at the Sage PQ.
No, these riddles and these puzzles they take so much time, so much brain power. There's like, I don't know how many people is in this Discord that's like publicly working on this all together, but this is impossible.
That's crazy. That's pretty cool though. Huh. Okay. Yeah, very fun.
Yeah, no, it's been fun. It's been very fun, and that's what I've been using most of my time right now. So I need to test Sage again.
Yeah, reasonable. I might test Sage. I might just test for Montreal, honestly. Yeah, that's probably the play. Maybe I'll play this KO deck and get beaten up by some other aggro decks and then go back to playing Kano.
Yeah, or you can just randomly win and be like, huh, this format was easy.
It's true. It's definitely possible.
Okay, and we'll wrap it up here. Thanks for listening, guys.
Good night, everyone.